Hey everybody, I'm recording this video walkthrough because this cultural background exploration, our final project for our cultural psych class, is a little bit different than the stuff we've done before. And if we were still face-to-face instead of online, we would have taken some time to talk about this assignment in class. Obviously, we can't do that now, so hopefully this is the next best thing, so you can hear me explain kind of what I'm looking for in the different parts of this paper. All right, so what I did for these slides is I just screenshotted the assignment prompt and I put it piece by piece, and I'm going to talk through each piece a little bit more than just what's strictly included in the assignment prompt in this video. So this is due Monday, May 11th, so that's a week from today, this Monday when I'm recording this video, by 11:59 p.m. The first thing I want to mention here is that just like with the rest of our online weeks, our online modules, if you need a little more time to complete this, that's fine. Just send me an email, let me know. The final grades for this class are due Friday, May 15th by something like 5 p.m. So I just need to have them by like that Thursday. If you can get it to me in the due date Monday, that's obviously much easier for me to grade everything. But worst case scenario, you can get an extension for a couple of days past this due date. And if you think you're going to need more time even than that, I can also give you an incomplete in the course if it's not going to be, if your cultural background exploration won't be submitted by the time grades are due. And that's an option too, in which case you can take more time, even like over the summer and fall, to finish this piece of it. But just keep in mind, if I do give you an incomplete in the course, then the system will kick you out of any courses that have cultural psych as a prereq. So say you've done all your foundation courses in psych and you're ready to take pillar courses. If you get an incomplete in cultural, it'll kick you out of those. So just keep that in mind as kind of like a last resort. It's an option. I'm happy to do it if you need a little more time, but just keep that in mind, pros and cons. So for the objective for this assignment, if you think back to the very first day in this class, feels like forever ago, I had you do a little activity where we did some introductions, right? And I had you write some things about your professional self and your social self and your cultural self. And those were just some initial ideas about who you are culturally. And since then, obviously, we've talked about culture in way more detail. And so you know a lot more now about cultural psychology and the ways that culture impacts our lives. You know way more about that now than you did when this spring semester started way back in, was that January? Forever ago. And since then, we've done a lot of exit tickets where you've connected ideas from our course to our theme number 3 in the class, We're All Cultural Beings. And so this assignment is kind of an extension of theme number 3. It's a way for you to think more thoroughly, more deeply about how your own cultures have impacted you, how they've shaped you as a cultural being, and use course material as well as your own experiences, your own reflections to kind of tie those two things together. So that's the goal of this assignment. All right, now for what to do, you're going to draw upon class readings, class discussions. You can also use whatever other scholarly material you see fit. I say scholarly material because I don't just want you to go on Wikipedia and look things up. I'm sure you talked in your other courses before about how Wikipedia can be edited by anyone, so you're never really sure if the information there is accurate. So stick to scholarly material, and you don't have to do anything beyond our class readings, class slides, stuff like that. You don't have to look up news sources if you don't want to. It's just if you'd like to, that's something that you could do. I have in caps here, please note, this is very important. One of the main reasons I'm making this video walkthrough, I don't want you to miss this, is that you do have to reference course material in order to reflect critically on your experiences. So in other words, this is not just a personal essay, it's not just your own reflection on how your culture has impacted you. It's got to be integrated with course material, and that could be readings from the textbook. It could be those sources that we've been reading for our weeks of online learning. You know, that's what I mean by course material, textbook, those online sources that we've been working with. Those things I want you to be incorporating into this paper. So in paragraph format, you're going to answer these 3 questions. So the first one, our theme number 3 in this course, is that we're all cultural beings. With that in mind, what culture or cultures do you belong to? There's a list below that's a starting place for cultural identities. I'll talk about that in a second. But I do want to kind of highlight this piece here. Please only list identities that you feel comfortable sharing. I'm the only person who's going to be reading your papers. I'm not sharing them with anybody else, so it's just me. but I don't want you to feel like you have to talk about a certain culture with me. If there's something you'd rather not talk about, that's totally fine. I'm more than okay with that. Just pick a couple of cultures that you're comfortable talking about. So please don't feel obligated to talk about something in particular. Choose whatever you're interested in talking about for your cultural identity. So we talked about throughout this class, we all belong to a lot of different cultures, right? Like American culture for one, as well as many others. And so there's lots of different options that you could talk about here for cultures that you do belong to. All right, and then number 2, what elements of your cultures have most shaped your identity? Give examples of at least 3 ways your cultural background has shaped who you are as a person. So at least 3 means you want to have minimum 3, right? If you'd like to talk about more than 3, that's totally great. It's your preference to go beyond that, but make sure you have at least 3. And what you're going to do is cite and explain supporting ideas from our class readings or slides for each of your 3 examples. So I have an example in parentheses here, e.g. define holistic thinking and cite the chapter on cognition for this definition. So say you are from a cultural background, maybe you're from a collectivistic culture, and you realized when we talked about holistic versus analytic thinking, you were like, oh yeah, I totally do think holistically. So that could be one of the 3 ways that your culture shapes your identity. And in order to integrate the course material with your own reflections, you're going to want to define what holistic thinking is. In your definition, you're going to want to cite the chapter on cognition for where you got that information from, and then you'll reflect on it. So then it'll be some personal reflection of how you've seen this impacting you. You could maybe give an example or 2 of like, oh, for example, in this one situation, I thought about it this way, but I realized that my friend from an individualistic culture thought about it this other way. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for, the reflection piece. And that's what I mean by integrating course materials with your own reflection. So you're kind of marrying those 2. You're talking about the stuff that we learned in class, the concepts, the cultural psych content, and you're marrying that with your own personal experiences, how you've seen it play out. So it says here you should aim to balance description of concepts from class and your own reflection on how those cultural concepts have affected you in your life. So it's really a combination of, definitions, course concepts, talking about stuff we learned about, and also your own experiences. All right, and then number 3, what insights have you gained about yourself and about other people as a result of taking this class? So explain at least 1 insight about yourself and at least 1 insight about other people. Cite and explain supporting ideas from our class readings or slides for each, and again, aim to balance course content and your own reflections. And so this is just, in general, what have you learned? So an insight from our course material, something that you learned that's new about yourself, and something that you learned about other people as well. And this is kind of vague, and that's intentional. That's because I want you to take this number 3 and write about whatever you think is applicable. Write about whatever you learned. It could be something that you're like, oh, that's really cool. It could be something like, oh man, that really sucks. Whatever you want to go with this one, this is your chance to talk about whatever you want to talk about for insights that you've learned as a result of learning this stuff about cultural psych this semester. All right, now this is the next part of the prompt. This is some ideas of possible cultural identities that you might assess, but note, this list is not exhaustive by any means. I just listed a couple of things that might be common identities to think about. That could be things like country of origin, states where you've lived, languages you speak, race and ethnicity, gender, age, religion, ability and disability, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status. As we've talked about this semester, there are all kinds of cultural groups that we belong to, some of which are listed here, but many of which I didn't list here. So you can think about what cultural identities you have that, again, that you feel comfortable talking about. So I just want to reemphasize, if there's something you don't really want to talk about in your paper or you don't want me to read about, that's totally fine. I'm not going to be like, hey, why didn't you talk about this? I'm not going to do that. So it's just whatever you feel comfortable talking about. All right, now here's an important piece since we haven't done very much of this in class, how to cite and paraphrase for this paper. So to support your connections to class material, you're going to be citing class readings, class slides, and any other scholarly material that you see fit in your paper. So for example, if you're discussing how you gain an insight from this class, that your working class background influences how you view making choices, you'll need to explain that idea and include an in-text citation in parentheses that indicates the source of the information. Now, here's an important point. In-text citations can be APA format, which is the format, the citation format that we use in psychology. They can be really, truly APA format, but it can also be more generic for this paper. I'm totally fine with something generic, like this example here, parentheses, Dr. HB, comma, motivation slides. That's totally, it's not truly APA format, but that's totally fine for this paper. I'm not grading you on APA format at all. I just want you to have some kind of an in-text citation that indicates your source. And the reason I'm having you do these in-text citations, even though they're not necessarily APA format, is because the skill of citing your sources is really, really important in most fields, but especially in psychology. We care a lot in psychology about making sure that we are attributing our sources to the places where we got them from, to make sure that we're acknowledging where we got information from. And when you're taking methods courses, and when you take advanced courses in the major, and you write more serious research papers or more serious response papers about stuff, you're going to be using this kind of format. You're going to be using in-text citations, be acknowledging your sources. So that's why I'm including this component in this paper, just to kind of help you start getting in that habit of acknowledging where you got information from. Now, keep in mind, the in-text citation, that's just for the course concepts. You do not need an in-text citation for your own reflection piece. So when you're writing and you're saying, oh, for example, I saw this play out here, that doesn't need a citation because that's coming from you. And that's true even when you're writing research papers, by the way. If you're writing about the information that you learned from a literature review, then you cite those sources. But if you're writing about, say, your own experiment in methods 2, then that doesn't get sourced because that's your writing. So if it's coming from you, from your experiences, from your reflections, doesn't need a citation. But if it's course concepts, you're defining how something works, you're defining what holistic thinking is, right? Then you do need a citation. Now, you're welcome to include a works cited page at the end, but in-text citations alone are fine for this paper. So you can kind of think about it, it's kind of like we're doing a little modified APA style, like a little intro to APA style for this paper. All right, now in addition to citing your sources, make sure you've written your entire paper in your own words. And this might sound like, well, duh, of course I'm going to do that. But the reason I put this in here is because I want to make sure that you're not accidentally or otherwise copying and pasting anything from another source. So for example, when you are defining your terms, like defining holistic thinking, you're not going to just copy and paste that phrasing from the textbook. You're going to write that in your own words and then include the citation to show where you got your source from. That's called paraphrasing. So I know we haven't really talked about that much in this class, but I do have a couple of handouts posted to our Blackboard page in this module folder about how to properly paraphrase. So if you've never really paraphrased before, or you'd like a little touch up on how to do it, check out those handouts. But basically paraphrasing, writing it in your own words. And even if you're writing it in your own words, you're paraphrasing correctly, you do still need an in-text citation because you're getting the idea from something else. So in-text citations aren't just for getting exact words from someone else, they're from getting ideas from another source as well, which is what you're doing when you're defining holistic thinking, because you probably got that from the textbook chapter that you read. A quick tip about paraphrasing. The way I recommend you do this is, say you are using holistic thinking, you go back to the textbook and you look at their definition of holistic thinking, and you're like, okay, now I need to write it, I need to paraphrase it, put it in my own words. How do I do that? What I recommend you do, read the textbook, make sure you understand it, and then put that away. So like physically turn your textbook upside down so you can't see it, or if you're looking at an ebook, minimize that window so you can't see it, and then write your own definition. The reason I recommend doing that is because it will prevent you from accidentally using any of the same phrasing as what was in the textbook. Because you're not looking at that source, you're not going to accidentally use the same sentence structure, for example. It really, by doing this, by turning it upside down, putting it away, it really forces you to write it in your own words. And that's what I want from you. That's what I want you to do. Because if you just quote it, don't quote it in this paper, but if you were just to quote the definition, then all that shows me is that you know how to find the definition. It doesn't show me that you understand what that definition means. And that's what the point of this paper is. This is a chance for you to show me what concepts you learned from this class and to demonstrate to me that you understand them and that you see how they're happening in your own life. That's the whole point of this paper. That's why I don't want you to quote. That's why I want you to paraphrase. So by writing it in your own words, you're showing me that you really understand it. Now, a quick note about this, if you're kind of feeling unsure of whether you're paraphrasing correctly, if you're writing it before the due date, which I recommend you start it before the due date for sure, you can email me and say, hey, I wrote this paraphrase definition, but just hoping to just get a quick double check or something like that. You can email it to me and I'll check it for you. And I'll let you know if it needs to be, paraphrased more or if it looks good as is. Now, ideally for this to work best, if you send me your paraphrase and the original source phrasing in the same email, that's going to help me be able to respond to you really quickly. So please, if you're going to take advantage of this, if you're going to take me up on this offer, please do include your paraphrase and the original source writing so I can compare them really quickly and get you an answer faster. All right, so hopefully that helps with information of citing and paraphrasing. So just make sure you've got your in-text citations. They don't have to be APA format, but they can if you want to. And then just be sure that you're always writing in your own words when you're writing this paper. All right, now this is information on formatting your paper. So it can be single-spaced or double-spaced, I don't care. Try to write it in 12-point Times New Roman or Calibri font. This is just easier to read with 1-inch margins. That's the default on Microsoft Word. You're probably fine margin-wise. Write your paper in paragraph format and try to keep it around 2 to 4 pages long. But keep in mind, I'm not strict about page length for this assignment. So if it's less than 2 or more than 4 pages, I'm not going to be like, minus points. I'm not going to do that. That's just a rough guideline of what I think it'll probably take to write this paper appropriately. But you can write as much or as little as you need in order to thoroughly address the questions in the prompt. That's what I really care about, addressing the questions in the prompt, exploring them thoroughly. That's what I care about, not the page length. All right, section on professionalism in writing. This isn't a writing intensive class, but please do write your papers with care. So be sure that you're starting with an introduction paragraph and ending with the conclusion paragraph. Those don't have to be super fancy. It's just better than just diving right into the material and ending abruptly. It's much nicer to have a little intro and a little conclusion. I think I have some handouts posted on intros and conclusions in the folder too, if you'd like a reminder of how to structure those. Be sure that you're writing full sentences, organize your sentences into paragraphs, use proper spelling and grammar, proofread your paper, all that good stuff, check for typos. So just the same as you would submitting a paper for any other class, just make sure you're being careful about it. How to submit, so it can be turned in electronically as PDF, docx, or RTF file. Via the Blackboard submission portal. So you can upload the text of your assignment into the comment section too in case the file is unreadable. If you need an extension on this, just let me know. But as I mentioned earlier, keep in mind that final grades are due Friday, May 15th by like 5 p.m. So I can only extend your deadline by a few days if needed. Or there's also that option of the incomplete in the class. If you think you might need to take advantage of that, just email me and we'll chat more about what that would look like. And then as usual, there's a little checklist at the bottom here. So be sure to double check that you answered all the questions thoughtfully. You didn't copy and paste any text. I recommend, by the way, you actually do treat this like a checklist and double check all of your explanations of concepts before you submit to make sure that they are thoroughly paraphrased. Make sure your paper has no spelling or grammatical errors. Make sure it's in the correct format. The format still matters, by the way, because I have a Windows PC. I don't have a Mac. So if you submit it as a Pages file, I literally can't read it. So please turn it into a PDF and save me and you both some grief. Make sure your file is correctly uploaded and that you put your text into the assignment comment section as well. All right, now I hope this was helpful for you to get a little explanation, me talking through some of these ideas. If anything is still confusing, just let me know. Talk to me by email. I'm more than happy to chat a little bit more about what I'm looking for in this paper. All right, now there's one thing I want to say. Oh, actually, there's 2 more things I want to say. One is the grading. So this is the last page of the prompt. So your cultural background exploration is worth up to 100 points based on thoughtful and accurate completion of all questions in the prompt. After writing a draft of your paper, be sure to reread the questions in the prompt and make sure that you've answered all of them before you submit your paper. I really recommend that because it's easy to write something and submit it and not even realize that you forgot to do something. So that's why I recommend things like proofreading as well as this recommendation to reread it and make sure you've got everything just so you don't accidentally forget something. And then right here, this is the grading rubric that I'm going to use to grade your paper. So it's in 3 categories and points breakdowns. So the first category is responses to prompt questions. So for full points on this category, responses will be articulated clearly. All questions from the prompt are answered thoughtfully and thoroughly. For a little less than full points, responses are reasonably clear. All questions are answered at least satisfactorily. And then fewer points, responses are somewhat confusing, not everything's answered, or many responses are inaccurate or missing. This is kind of like the check, check plus check minus system that we've been doing for the homeworks and the module responses. It's just not in that check, check plus check minus format this time, but it's the same basic idea. So the second column here, like in this case, the 40 to 59 points, that's kind of like a check. It's like, yeah, everything was fine. And then the maximum points, that's like the check plus, like, wow, that was amazing. And then the fewer points are kind of like the check minus, like, not so good. So that's kind of like how this is formatted. And then there's a category for use of course content. So maximum points, smoothly synthesizing your own ideas with course content. Relevant readings or sources are interpreted accurately, explored in reasonable detail. That kind of just means you're getting everything correct. So if you're explaining things correctly and it's matching what you're writing in your reflection. And then fewer points, using course content reasonably well, interpreted mostly accurately, explored in some detail. And then, worse, like incorporating in a shallow way, only somewhat accurate, some are missing, stuff like that. And then there's just 10 points, so just 10% of this assignment is for formatting, writing style, and grammar. So maximum points, writing is clear and concise, contains no spelling or grammatical errors. A couple fewer points, writing is easy to understand, has few spelling or grammatical errors. Worse off, contains some points of confusion or many errors, etc. The reason I'm pointing this out in this video is because this is literally the rubric I'm going to use on your paper. So that means you can use this as a check. So after you've written your paper, after you've checked they've answered all the questions, then think about how you would grade your paper. And you can kind of use that to help you maybe catch something that you might need to maybe expand more on, that kind of stuff. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Okay, now for real, there's one more thing I want to say. And that's thank you. Thank you guys for a great class. I really enjoyed teaching this class. I really enjoyed having you guys as students. I've really missed you over the last couple weeks of online learning. I feel like the online has been okay. I haven't minded the switch in terms of, the kinds of things I'm having you do. I had a lot of fun finding those online module sources and writing the questions. And so I hope that you guys enjoyed learning those topics as well. But I really do miss seeing you guys face to face. I hope that when we're back on campus, I hope that I'm going to see you guys around so we can say hi and catch up a little bit. I want to say too, thanks to you guys for hanging in there. I know this has been really tough for everybody in so many different ways. I know a lot of you are really busy. You have jobs, you have, childcare responsibilities, you have family responsibilities. You guys are already busy, and then add the pandemic on top of that. I know it's been really stressful for a lot of people. So I just want to say thanks to you guys for hanging in there. You guys have done a really great job with your module responses. I've really enjoyed reading your module responses. And I just appreciate everything that you've done. I hope that you guys feel proud of yourself for getting through this really ridiculously bizarre semester, halfway normal, and then the other half just really weird. So I hope that you're all proud of yourselves for getting through this. It's been hard, and I hope that you're proud of yourselves. I'm proud of you for pulling through, for getting through this. All right, that's all I have to say for you. Again, if you have questions about anything, just let me know. You can send me an email. I'm happy to chat. And then I will be in touch. Next week, I'll be grading everybody's final papers, and then I'll be emailing you guys to let you know what your final grade ended up being, and I'll let you know per the grading promise whether I'm giving you your midterm grade or your final grade. And I'll tell you all of that stuff in an email before I post those. So keep an eye out for that, and otherwise, I hope you guys have a relatively stress-free final week of the semester, and I hope you guys get a chance to relax in the upcoming weeks and kind of take a break after all of this ridiculousness. All right, again, email if you have any questions, and otherwise, I will be in contact with you by email next week.